Hello, my love. Hello, my loves. 1 second here. We have technical difficulties. Okay. Make sure. Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me. There we go. Okay, if you are on Facebook or YouTube, can you let me know? Thanks, Tanya. Can you hear me, Tanya? Because I changed my mic after I realized I hadn't plugged it in. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. Awesome. All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I am streaming in ridiculous amounts of places. So I'm on TikTok. Hi, TikTok. I am on Instagram. This is my first time streaming from my streaming platform on Instagram. So I know it looks kind of like I'm super close up, but that's what it is. And if you comment on Instagram, I will check the comments at the end. It's kind of a weird setup. And then obviously Facebook and YouTube. So I'm in all the places. It makes it easier for me so I don't have to do a bunch of broadcasts. If you are brand new to me, I am Johanna Burkhardt. I am a multidimensional channel, teacher, and healer. And I'm really here to help you step into your self-mastery, manage your energy, and create the reality that you are desiring. It's kind of a tall order sometimes these days. It really is a little bit of a tall order. So with this broadcast, I know that on a couple of places I posted a question yesterday that for people who have questions about parts work, about integrating our wounded aspects of self, about healing those inner conflicts and really integrating and doing embodiment work. The questions that you had about those topics so that we could go live. I could go live today with the guides and talk about and answer some of those questions. And I'll also be going live next week. So for those of you who are on, TikTok, you can drop your questions below in the comments. This broadcast will be saved on YouTube if you want to go back and watch it, or if you have a question and you can't stick around to have it answered, you can drop it and I can try to answer it in future broadcasts. So I'll be live twice next week with live guests. So the main reason why I am doing this is because I have some exciting news, and I'm just going to get this part out so that we can get diving into the questions and helping people out. Because let me tell you, the next 3 lives is going to be super juicy. There's going to be lots of information. I'm going to be answering questions. I'm not going to be holding back. So it's going to be a very valuable set of lives that I'm going to be doing. So please ask your questions. I will do my best to answer them. Hi, Julie. I miss you. It's so good to see you too. But I am proud to say and finally announce, I know some of you have been waiting for me since I did this last year. I am reopening Soulvaltion. Soulvaltion is really about finding salvation in your soul instead of seeking salvation outside of yourself, right? So it's about doing parts work. It's about understanding those pieces of you inside of you that keep calling in the same toxic patterns and cycles and people and situationships that make us want to pull our freaking hair out. Because we're like, why do I keep calling in this same drama, the same crap? The crop is close on Instagram. Whatever, it's there. What are you gonna do? So this is gonna be cohort 2 for Soulvaltion. So while the teaching, let me ground myself here for a second. While the teachings, I already ran live last year, so those modules are going to be ready to go and they will be dripped out over 3 months. There is still a live component because every other week we will be live together on Zoom and you can ask your questions, you can ask for guidance. We can go deep into on-spot coaching. But you also have access to the whole 3 months, which is the most valuable piece through Marco Polo. If you've never used that, that is the best thing since sliced bread. Tanya, also my friend Tanya, who's in here, she uses it in her programs too. It's a video chat, and then you'll also have me on WhatsApp. So you have like full support from me. And so I'll be dropping a link to that here shortly for you guys to check out the page. If you're on TikTok, I have not updated my links page yet for it, but you can check that in a couple of hours. It'll be there. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for watching my journey, Julie. Um, so let me just do this now because I get in there. So I already have 2 questions that were asked that I'm going to answer. But as we go along, drop your questions about parts work. And if you do parts work, we'll just start right there. So a lot of people want to know, right, what is parts work? Parts work really is our opportunity to reconcile the conflict between the different wounded aspects of ourselves that were created in trauma or just in life experiences in general. Because when we think about trauma, a lot of times people think little trauma, big T trauma. Trauma really is I'm going to oversimplify it. It's basically something that's too much, too fast, not enough for too long. And it can also be a traumatic experience, abuse, abandonment. It can be any of those things as well. So we forget that trauma sometimes has a lot more to do with what the needs that weren't met versus something actually that happened to us. And that trauma, the moment it creates an impact on us, right? It doesn't have to impact anybody else. It doesn't have to seem big. So you could be sitting at the dinner table and you could have been 6 years old and your parents just started losing their shit because you didn't finish eating your dinner, right? And you were just not hungry. But that your parents aren't going to remember that in 10 years. But in that moment, your 6-year-old self had had a complete split, a fragment inside of them that said, "Hey, we're not enough right now. Like we don't feel loved. We don't feel seen. We don't feel understood. And so I need to that there's a part of us that fractures and it kind of gets pushed to the back. And in that moment, 2 things happen. So one, the inner child is wounded, right? It hurts. It doesn't feel seen, it doesn't feel heard, it doesn't feel understood. But at the same moment, and this is where I think I differ from a lot of people out there, what my guides say is in that moment, at the same time, an ego, per- protector personality is created. So the moment that the inner child is wounded, there is a protector personality, alter ego that the ego creates to defend or protect that inner child. And that one is usually the one that wears the mask for I'm the strong woman and I can do it all by myself, right? I don't need a man, I don't need anybody else. Or, it's someone who is phony or pretend or wears a mask, right? It's that personality that is created to protect that inner child from ever being hurt the same way again. But that's beautiful news because the moment that you heal that inner child, there's and that part of you is integrated. That ego personality is integrated as well. So you're really integrating 2 aspects of self back into the whole. And let me just say this to clarify, you're already whole and complete, but there is a fragmentation that happens as part of the human experience. The healthiest people with the least amount of trauma are automatically fragmented about 22 times. And this is according to psychological studies. Thank you, Tanya, sharing. Thank you, Barbara, for sharing. I appreciate it. So the point of it is to really reconcile those parts and create a unified, embodied sense of self. So there's other parts of us that we don't really talk about a lot as well, and those are soul fragments, right? So It's other aspects of us. And this is a part that we don't quite get deep into. And if I feel we might do it, we might add on a module, we might add a teaching module on this round where I talk about more of the spiritual side. But here's my take, and this is why I don't do a lot of spiritual development work anymore unless you've already done the parts work. Because if you want to start channeling, if you want to start doing all of these things, but you are not already have had time, even if it's just a year or two doing shadow work, you're not already in the practice of where you're looking at the different aspects of yourself and you're cleaning up your limiting beliefs and you're cleaning up those aspects of self, the information that you are bringing through is going to be tainted. We all are channeling the same information. We're all accessing the same one source, right? There's different frequencies within that source. We call those dimensions. There's different levels of information within those dimensions. But the one thing that's different among us all, and why mediums, why psychics, why channels can bring information through differently, is because of their own filter. So that filter is muddied up by your limiting beliefs. It's muddied up by your inner child wounds, your programming. And as you become more and more self-aware, right, aware of self and the issues that are inherently your job to address and face in the mirror, the clearer your channel becomes. So if you ever hear someone say, I'm a clear channel. So back in the day, when I was new coming up in the scene, like, 2015, 2016, I used to hear a lot of people say, I'm a clear conduit channel. And it took me a long time to understand that what they were trying to say was is they had a clear filter. And I'm gonna just be as blunt as I can be, right? Nobody has a clear filter. Nobody. If you're trance channeling, that's probably the clearest you're gonna get. And I do trance channel, but I don't do it a lot. I do more conscious channeling. Um, but when you do trance, and what I mean by trance is by allowing, and like I said, you people have seen me do it publicly, but I don't do it a lot. It's where I allow like my ninth dimensional Pleiadian self, right? Or my 10th dimensional Andromedan self, or the Ancients Collective to take over my vessel where I step aside. And I'm still standing. The best example of this is Abraham Hicks. I'm still standing. I'm still opening. My eyes are still open. But my consciousness is over here and it's watching me. And that version, I've allowed a collective to take over and speak through me. So that's about as clear as you're going to get. Anything else is going to have some taintedness because it's your own filter. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I personally don't encourage or teach people to go out and be channels, mediums, all of those things until they know how to cleanse their own filter, how to really recognize and start doing that work so that they can be like, hey, I'm in this process, right? And they get better and better and better through this practice where they're becoming self-aware. Because being self-aware and being awake are very different things. Being awake is being very aware that there's more than this life, that there's more standing among us, that everything's happening and all at the same time, that we can communicate, that we don't die. Being self-aware, only about 15% of the population is. And the rest of them, there's a huge chunk that think they are, but they're really not. And that's because that they don't recognize and take radical responsibility for their own behaviors and actions. And there's this caveat, that's one part of self-awareness, and is being willing to make the change immediately instead of procrastinating, instead of continuing to repeat the problems or issues because they have no desire to put in the real work. So it's a lot of work to be self-aware. And it's a lifelong journey. It's never just done. But it starts here. It starts with resolving those inner conflicts inside of us that keep calling in the same fears, programs, limiting beliefs, toxic situations, relationships. Um, and um, and so that's what this live and the next two lives are about. And we're going to dive into some of that. So, like I said, right now I only have two questions. So I already answered one of them, and we're going to go into another one, which um, I'm going to give a real life example, and it's hi Renee. It's kind of new relationship where I'm dating somebody, and so it's going to be interesting to share this. Um, okay. So here was another question that we got. How do you recognize triggers from your childhood trauma or limiting beliefs when in a relationship? When you recognize them, how do you address when you recognize the trigger, right, of a limiting belief that's within a relationship? And this is generally, I'm going to say this is probably more of new relationships, but they can happen with all relationships. How do you address them, process, and alchemize them? She understands, this person who asked the question, that they are mirrors of us. The other person in the relationship is a mirror of you, um, to show you your wounds. But how do you handle it appropriately, engaging and involving them? So this is a really great question and something that I literally just went through for myself. So I have a very fresh example of it. Mm, I have to drink a lot when I'm having, so please bear with me. Okay, so I want to make sure it's clear that there really isn't a difference between a trigger and a limiting belief, that like a trauma from a trigger and limiting belief. Your beliefs and the inherent foundational programs that you run, these are deep programs, like the way that you always respond, the way that you always do things, how you are. All of this stuff is developed in the first 7 years of your life. The first 7 years of your life lays the foundational structure of who you are. They are the programs that you run, the beliefs that are instilled. Now, as you grow older, you can develop more limiting beliefs, of course, right? But most of those all happen within the first 21 years of your life. After that, it's kind of a set thing. And then if you have an experience after that or something that happens, it can create a limit. But for the most part, they're all based upon a something that happened in your childhood. So I want to make that clear. Okay. The inherent programs you run, the main limiting beliefs that you have are all stemmed from somewhere in your childhood. So with that said, let me give you an example. So if you're in a relationship and something happens, and I'm just going to share my story as vaguely, but not as vaguely, the best way I can navigate this because um, I, again, I'm very new into a relationship, and but I want to use this example because I think it will be very helpful. So I have, and you don't necessarily need to know your attachment styles, but I have a disorganized attachment style. So what does that mean? It means I'm not only am I anxious attached, but I'm also um, uh, what's the other? Um, I forget the actual name of it, but where I don't like I want to push it all away. Right. So there's anxious and then the other one. I wish I could. I'm in channel brain, so I can't think of the technical words for it. So that you're either super attached or you're super detached, where you push people away. So it's that push pull. I can go into both. That's why it's disorganized. Because one minute I'm like, oh my god, I need you, and the next minute I'm like, get the heck away from me. And the get the heck away from me is usually coming from I feel like I'm about to be abandoned, so I'm going to abandon you first, which really is self abandonment. Avoidant. Yes, thank you, Renee. So it's either attachment or avoidant. So it's the push pull, no matter what. So when I'm attached, I get super anxious. I'm like super obsessive and over focused. And when I'm avoidant, I'm ignoring. I'm focusing somewhere else. I'm being super detached, super aloof, and pushing the other person away. And so there's this push pull that happens. Push pull, push pull, push pull. So that's a disorganized. Most people fall between either anxious attached or avoidant attachment. But each of these attachment styles can come out at different points when you're disorganized. And so starting to date somebody, and it's they always tell you, and this is very true. I've given many private mentorships, a lot of advice in this area, and I'm having to practice it and work with it. And it's a lot of work. But the first healthy relationship you have after the toxic ones, that is the ultimate test. And it is the most challenging. And being self aware is the most important thing. At the very least, being present. So if you are somebody who has had multiple toxic relationships and you want to prepare for a healthy relationship, this work that I'm talking about is free because this is the work that I've been doing for years that has allowed me to get to this point. So let's come back to now. I start dating this guy. He is safe. I don't get the toxic butterflies. He wants to make me a priority. He wants me to take up space. He is a good listener. He communicates. Like he's showing all of the green flags of a healthy relationship. And I feel a deep connection to him. And everything's going great, right? And start I start to feel my anxious attachment come on because I hadn't heard from him in a length of time where my inner child was starting to lose her shit. I started to feel anxious. I started checking my phone constantly. Is he going to text me? Is he going to call me? And I started to obsess and overthink and start to go into that spiral. Did I do something? Did I say something? Is it me? And I caught myself immediately. I knew what was happening. And so I tried to reconcile it. I tried to reconcile it. I was not doing a whole lot of good reconciling it, like without stopping. And so I stopped. I sat down and I sat with myself. I sat with myself. And I asked myself some questions. Is there any, in this moment, did anything happen or anything an indicator that the man is not interested in me? The man is avoiding me? Is there any of the same signs from other past relationships? Nope, 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 nope. In that moment, I said, this has nothing to do with him. It has nothing to do with him. He is not the source of the problem. But the energy is the same. And this is something I say a lot, right? You will call in same person, different body, different face. The same situation, the same type of job, the same type of boss, the same type of friend. They just will look a little bit different. The energy is the same. The circumstances are different. So the energy was the same. I was uncertain, unsure of when I was going to hear from this person again because we had not set up a scheduled time to talk, which isn't really necessary, right? And so I realized in the moment, this has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do with my programming. It has everything to do with my trauma. So I sat down and I sat with myself and I just surrendered into the uncomfortable, anxious, fearful feelings that I was having. I just let it, I let go of all resistance and allowed it to just take over my body, to wash over my body, for me to just be like, this is what this feels like. This is what it felt like when I was a child, wondering if my dad was going to abandon me because my mom did when I was 3. Wondering if my friend was going to reject me because my own mom did when I was 3. Was I doing enough to keep that person around? Was I making it so they needed me so they wouldn't leave me? Were they giving me constant validation and reassurance? And if they weren't, then I was constantly trying to do more and give more and be more and change who I was to make sure that they would stick around. All of that super toxic, right? And what I used to do, I was married 3 times. I lost myself in all 3 marriages. Why? Because I became who they needed me to be to keep me around because I needed someone to lead me. I needed someone to choose me. I wanted someone to want me, choose me, to prioritize me. And so I found ways, my inner child and my ego personality found ways to make sure that happened. but it wasn't healthy. It's not what I actually wanted. That's why I kept calling it in. So I sat with myself. I let go of all resistance. I let myself feel it. And because I let go of all resistance, it didn't last long, but I took it a step further, closed my eyes, and I saw myself as I am today. Who you are 5 minutes ago, who you are yesterday is an inner child. And a lot of people don't realize that. We're literally just children walking around in adult suits sometimes. So I saw myself the way that I was in that moment. And I saw another version of me come sit down in front of me. And that version of me that sat down in front of me, and I go really deep into this in Soulvaltion, like how to work with the aspects of yourself. But I basically told this version of me, right, working with that parts work, let it out. And I saw, like, I communicated to her that she was safe to be irrational, to be wild, to freak out, to just let all of it out. And I literally saw myself so angry, taking a bat and just beating the bed, beating the pillows, screaming, kicking. Why didn't they choose me? Why wasn't I important enough? What did I do wrong? Just freaking out. And I watched this happen in my brain, in my mind. I felt my body as it went through the motions of anger as if it was really doing those actions until I saw that version of me break and the grief came, right? 'Cause anger is grief's bodyguard. So then the grief came, the sadness. And that was the moment that my other part of me stepped in and said, "I love you anyway. I love you right now." I wasn't trying to fix me. I wasn't trying to fix me. I wasn't trying to give myself advice. I wasn't trying to rationalize it. I wasn't trying to say, "It's okay. I got your back. We're gonna be okay no matter what." None of that. I just told her how loved she was, that I was choosing her in that moment. All of this took a matter of 5 minutes, by the way. It seems like it's gonna take a lot longer, but it took me about 5 minutes. And you wanna hear the wild part? When I came out of meditation, there was a text message from I was creating the resistance, and when you're in resistance, right, you are going to literally be blocking everything. So when you're in resistance, or even when you're over anxious and needy, when you needy, let's do that part. When you are anxious and needing that validation, needing someone to buy from you, needing someone to choose you, wanting someone to love you, wanting someone to be your friend, whatever it is, it creates this unburdened expectation on anyone that comes in contact, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want that." Creates resistance, right? And the opposite of that is the same thing. When you're in resistance and you're fighting, there's an inner conflict happening inside of you. Everything that's happening inside of you is admitted, right? That's your frequency. What's happening inside of you is your frequency. And that gets omitted out into your energetic field, which then vibrates. Anyone that comes in contact with you, or when you're putting yourself out there on the internet, even, is going to feel that. They're just going to feel resistance, so they're going to be resistant. But the minute you surrender and allow yourself to feel it, allow it into your heart space, that's the moment that you're now letting every good, bad, and indifferent. I always use this analogy, and the spirits gave it to me a long time ago. If you're standing in a river and you don't, there's certain things, this is why I don't, the guides always taught me not to believe in energy protection. Energy protection implies resistance right off the bat. If you're trying to protect yourself against anything, you're protecting yourself against everything. Now, that's different than having boundaries and discernment, right? That boundaries and discernment are a filter. It's different. But if you're standing in the river and you can be wide open. Yes, some riffraff's going to come through. There might be some trash that goes by, but you can discern and step out of the way and be like, yeah, no thanks. That doesn't work for me. I'm going to let that go on by. That's not for me. I'm not going to take it personal. When you take it personal, now you're making your part of it, right? But if you stay in the river, yes, you can bob and weave and allow the things that aren't serving you to pass through you or by you, but you're still going to be in the river. So you're going to be able to cherry pick the things you're like, oh, that's for me. Oh, yeah, that's great. But the minute you start building a dam, well, now you're blocking it all. So the answer to this question is in what my story that I just said. It's a you problem. It's a you problem. So when you recognize something's up, you need to say, was there something, when the trigger happens, was there something that this person did that is a red flag? Was there an action in reality, in real time? Was there something, an action that they did or didn't do that is causing this? Or is the energy just the same? And this is something that always happens. Is this something that's coming up from an old, from my childhood? You're the only one that's going to be able to discern that. And let me tell you, if it's something that happened in the now and is not based upon a past trigger, it's going to feel, it's going to feel more of a shock, a more of a stab, a more of a getting caught off guard. Oh my God, I need to figure out what this means, how to deal with this. When it's a trigger, you're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel in fear. You're going to feel uncertain. You're going to be like, oh my God, this is happening again. It's going to be a different energy. It's going to be like, how do I'm repeating. I'm repeating. This is happening again. What do I do? How do I stop this? It's going to be more of obsessive, more anxious. It's going to be a different feeling. And so then when do you involve the other person? So that again is your discernment. So if it's a communication thing, you can always say, hey, it's about ownership, right? Boundaries are about you, right? Boundaries are never about the other person. It's never about telling the other person what they can and cannot do. You can't control that. Your boundaries are about your actions and your actions. So what you can say is something like, I'm working on having better trust in a relationship, and it really helps me to know when we're going to be communicating. Your communication style. And just make it a thing where it's about you. Saying, it would make, I'm someone that likes, this is my communication style. What's your communication style? And then finding a way to where it works for both of you so that you both feel good. And there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable and exposing the fact that there is something that you are working on and that there is a way that person can help you. And this is really good early on. So, in the beginning of dating, if you own something and say, hey, I'm really working on my secure attachment, and if you want to be a part of that, it'd be really awesome if we could we could develop a pattern of communication, right? I know when you're going to communicate with me, or if you can't communicate with me, you can send me just a quick 2-second response. Hey, I'll catch you later or something. If that person, if they're genuinely interested in you, they're going to say, oh my God, absolutely. I would love to help you with that. And if they don't, they're really not your person. So it's up to you when you involve them. And if it is something that they're doing wrong, that doesn't, and by wrong, I mean it doesn't work for you, it's not in alignment for you. In that moment, what you can do is address it and say, hey, I really don't allow myself to be spoken to this way. I don't allow myself to be treated this way. This is something that doesn't really work for me. And I don't know, I don't, I'm sure you're probably not doing it intentionally, but when this happens, this is how I feel. And just bring it up in conversation. And if they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I can make some adjustments or changes, cool. And if they do it again, then you can say, okay, hey, like really, I don't allow myself to be treated this way. So if this happens again, I'm going to go ahead and end the relationship and move on. And then if it happens again, you have to back up your consequence. You have to. Because if you don't, you're just teaching people to roll over and walk all over you. And then you just keep teaching. So I hope that answered the question. She's not even on here, so I probably won't know until later. Yeah, the first 7 years. So the first 7 years is foundational. It's your base programs, patterns, beliefs. Um, from 8 to 14 is emotional development. This is where we develop emotional intelligence. So we learn how to work with our emotions, how to process our emotions. So if you grew up like I grew up with people who medicated their emotions, they ate, drank, did addictive things to avoid, used humor to deflect, pushed it down, repressed. That's what I learned to do. That's unhealthy, right? Or you have the other side of the coin where you have people that are explosive. So in from 8 to 14 is that's when we're really supposed to, when our child is angry or sad, we're supposed to look at them and say, I see that you're angry. I see that you are sad. We're supposed to mirror that back to them, help them recognize their emotion and allow them a safe space to process it. Instead of saying, stop crying, or there's no reason for you to be mad, there's no reason for you to be sad. That's when we did make people, that's the programming that happens to detach us from our emotions. And a lot of people come to me, they don't even know what their emotions feel like or what their body feels like because they have numbed it so much, or they have been detached from it so much because they weren't allowed to feel, or it wasn't safe to feel, right? If they did feel, it caused an issue in the house, or they were abused, or whatever the case may be, right? It wasn't safe. So from 8 to 14 is when we develop our emotional intelligence. And so again, first 7 years is our structuring. It's our foundational bones. It's what makes up our structure. That is the root chakra. The second 8 to 14 is our sacral chakra development. That's when our sacral is actually developed. Root chakra is not fully developed until the age of 7. Or in the first 3 years of your life, you don't even have an mark field. From 8 to 14, you're developing your sacral chakra. Again, emotional intelligence. And then from 15 to 21, you're developing your solar plexus. And the solar plexus is your ability to be your own mother and father, to be responsible for yourself, to think for yourself. It is your power center. It's you coming into your power. And then the heart chakra is always there. And then the upper three are mirrors of the lower three. So those aren't developed. They're just mirrors. They're just mirrors. But don't we all want to be someone's priority? And when in a marriage or committed relationship, shouldn't you be one another's priority aside from spirituality and taking care of yourself? Well, of course. Well, of course. We all want to be prioritized, right? And you should always be your number one priority, period. You should always be number one. When it comes to your kids, when it comes to your friends, when it comes to your significant others, you should always be number one. Is there going to be times when you're going to put someone like someone else is going to be, come a priority, or um, you miss something, so that for yourself to take care of something else? Yeah, there's going to be moments of that. But let me give you a different understanding, because a lot of people think self love and prioritizing means like, oh, I got to do my soul bath, or I got to meditate, and that might be part of it, right? But here's what I mean by priority: is if you don't want to do something, then you better not do it. But if you do it to make someone else happy, you're abandoning yourself. You're not prioritizing your own wants and needs. You're not prioritizing what you actually want and care about. Instead, you're saying, "Oh, I'm gonna do it because they want to do it, but I freaking loathe that, or that's not something I want to do." True compromise is when you find something that you both enjoy. And it's okay to have differences in the relationship and prioritize different things at different times. But when it comes to making yourself as a priority, I want to say that that is the number one thing I'm talking about, is making sure that what you're doing aligns for you. It's something that actually you want to do. And you're doing it because it lights your soul on fire. It makes you happy. It brings you peace. It makes you happy. It's enjoyable. And not because if I do this, they will be happy. They will love me. They will accept me. The only way I can spend time with them. If you hate fishing, but the only time to spend time with your husband is to go fishing with him, right? You're abandoning yourself for his need. Do you see? So making you a priority is about making sure your needs are being prioritized by you. Making them a priority is different. It's about also figuring out what needs of theirs that you can meet while they can do the same for you. But also, when you're speaking to them, giving them all of your attention. When you say you're going to do something, doing what you say you're going to do. Ways that you make your significant other a priority to you. Their importance is taken on, their best interest is taken on as your best interest. I'm going to listen to this person when they speak and give them my full attention because that is what would be in my best interest. It's also what's in their best interest. So I think we sometimes forget what priority means, right? It's when someone makes you a priority, it's taking their best interest on as your own because it's also in your best interest, not because it's going to make someone else happy or it's going to make them better. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Okay. So make sure there isn't any other comments. Okay. So how long have we been on? We've been on for about 40 minutes. If you have any other questions regarding parts work or integration, let me know. When we integrate, what we're doing is we're allowing that aspect of ourself that was wounded, that was hurt, that had something happen, that is still calling in old patterns and toxic relationships and situations, in your life, to be accepted into the heart space. Because when that trigger happens, when we feel it the most intently, that is the prime moment of integration. The moment you are in the full blown trigger, the moment you feel the emotion the most intensely, is when that aspect of you is knocking on the door of your heart saying, open the door, let me in, love me as I am. So when it's happening, it's learning what to do in that moment that is going to allow you to take that few minutes to sit down to see, hear, feel, and love the part of you that's either angry, that's hurt, and having self compassion. It's having compassion for yourself. When I sat there that day and felt that, I told myself, this is what it felt like to wonder if my dad was going to abandon me. This is what it felt like. But I didn't feel it when I was a kid because I wasn't in my body because my fight or flight system was activated, which means I was ungrounded, I was out of my body, and I wasn't connecting the mind, soul, and body together. And all three need to be together in order to integrate. So when you integrate, you allow that part of yourself to be loved, to be accepted. You allow yourself to feel what it would have felt like back then, what it did feel like back then, right? Because there's no time is an illusion. Most of us know that by now. It's all happening at the same time. And we all have heard, Louise Hay's got to feel it to heal it. So the moment that you allow yourself to let go of all the resistance and just be washed over in the moment of the trigger, to feel all of it, that's the moment the integration begins to happen. Begins. Because integration doesn't complete until the new action has taken place. Because once you come to that understanding that, okay, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to feel, so I'm going to do this work. Now you come back to the 0 point field. You're at the center of the crossroads. You can do the same thing and go back around the same pattern or cycle again, or you can choose differently. When we break the energy and we end up back at the 0 point field, then what happens is the energy is chaotic. The energy is chaotic. The energy needs to know which way to go. When we start a new pattern, the reason why it's so difficult, why it feels so challenging, why the new manifestation or the new thing doesn't happen instantaneously is because there isn't 10, 20, 30, 40 years of energy backing the pattern of programming. That's why when it's toxic or bad, we see the instant manifestation of our choice almost instantly because there's the weight of the world backing that. We've been doing that behavior or believing that belief or whatever for years. But when we get to the 0 point field and we break the energy and it's chaotic, the energy is seeking for a way to go. And sometimes that makes us feel stuck because we know we're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know which way to go. I don't know which decision to make. Inner conflict. But when you make the choice and you start going in the new direction, you have to, every time you come back to that 0 point, because it will happen over and over several times because it has to, the energy is seeking a new pattern, a new loop, a new direction. You have to keep making the new choice. And eventually, all that broken energy is going to be like, hey, we go this way now. We go this way now. And pretty soon, now you have all this energy backing it. And this is why I always say there's a gap between when you change your mental belief and change the way that you feel about it and the physical reality. There is a gap, especially when you're trying to manifest something or change a behavior or change something. It's new. You want something different. Like, but it's happened so quickly when I do something wrong. Yeah, again, it's backed by a shit ton of energy. But the new way isn't. It doesn't have that pump. And everything is vibrational. Everything is manifested. My cup. This is particles of energy held together so tightly from the belief that this is an Arctic cup. So much belief that this is what this is, that it creates a physical construct. But in reality, it's just particles of energy, particles of light. So when you're creating a new belief, there needs to be more and more and more energy fed into the new belief, into the new action, into the new way of being, into the new behavior. And we have to repeat it and repeat it until that energy is so compact that it manifests a physical reality. And this is why so many people don't get further because they don't have the courage to keep going, to keep trying, to keep doing the same action. They give up right before the miracle occurs. And let me tell you, I've been close to giving up several times because shit gets real. It takes you right to the edge of that line where you're standing on the cliff going, if this doesn't happen, I know I'm going overboard because I can't do it anymore. But if you muster any level of courage to continue to stand there, to continue to believe, to continue to have faith, to continue to believe in yourself and that what you're doing is going to get you to the right space, it will happen. And I've watched this happen in my life over and over again. And it will continue to happen over and over again until it is so imprinted that I never question that faith at all. Let me tell you, I have gotten really good at living off faith. I have gotten really good at living in uncertainty. I've gotten really good at believing in myself. Am I 100% there? Absolutely not. But I am a good 85, 90% in most areas of my life. Why? Because I've done this work day in and day out. And it's some days it's really easy, and other days it's fucking challenging. But I use the same tools that I teach in Soulvaltion, and I give you an understanding, and I give you the space to be seen. I give you the safe space where I hold space, where I don't fix you. I just let you vent. I just let you express because that is absolutely 100% needed. And then you have a second outlet that is for asking for guidance, for asking for help, for working with the community. And then you have the teachings, and then you have the group call where you get to say, Johanna, this is what I'm struggling with. Let's work with this. How can I do this? How can I help? How can I help? How can I apply this in my situation? Can you walk me through it? Can you give me deeper guidance? Can you do this? Can you, it's your time with me. This is why this program is so valuable. And the energy, March, the guides have said, and I record this, the guides have said for years, not years, all of last year, I've read this for guides, that March of 23 is going to be the biggest pivotal shift that humanity has ever seen. And that has been activated this month. April is when we're going to start to see that table flipping. The energy of what was activated starting to redirect us, starting to remove people, places, and things from us, bringing new people and places and things from us. April is another month of huge energy. It's also the beginning of eclipse season, which always is fun time anyway. This is the time, if you haven't been doing this work, to start to do this work and to really get it. Because I don't want you to need me. And I don't want you to have to read 85 books or 10 books or 3 books and try to implement this. If you do this work in this 3 months, you will walk away with a solid understanding and ability, and it will be your choice to continue to do it. But it is life changing. It's changed my life, and it's changed the lives of people who took the program last year and other people who have worked with me that helps, in private mentorship, where I decided to finally put this into just a program. And that's why it's called Soulvaltion, because my soul was broken. I felt my spirit was broken. I was looking for salvation. I had to be that for myself. Now, I'm also a firm believer, if you have relationship trauma, if you have a relationship trauma, it does need to be healed in a relationship. But I can tell you that I didn't start healing this relationship wound, my toxic wound, with a man. I started with a woman, my best friend. I started learning to be safe in a relationship with her, not with a man. It doesn't matter who it's with. And without that, I don't think I could have been where I am right now, going into a healthy relationship or healthy dating at least, without that experience. So don't think that you have to have a romantic relationship to heal relationship trauma. You just need to have the tools and someone that you feel safe and trust that you can do this with. And if that starts with our community, then that's where it starts. Maybe you already answered this and I missed it, but if you blocked out memories from trauma, is it important to remember those memories? Great question, Renee. No, no. So when you block out a memory when it's black, it's because when sometimes we have a traumatic event, again, it doesn't really matter what the traumatic event was, our amygdala stops recording. It just stops recording. So there sometimes is not an actual memory. It's just in I don't know if this was in the Body Keeps Score or where this came from, but have you ever heard the saying, um, the body remembers what the mind forgets? Your body never forgets. I had sexual assault. I was molested, and I had no memory of it. But my body always gave me the indicators. It's the flinching, the way that my body reacted when a man touched me. I knew that something had to have happened to me. It made no sense, otherwise my body would react that way, but I had no memory. But again, all you have to do is to heal it to feel it. You don't have to have that. But here's the thing: the logical mind, um, it's a computer, and like any computers, it wants to solve the problem. It wants to solve the problem. So there's a part of you that is going to seek understanding. You don't necessarily need to understand to bring it into reconciliation. So the answer to that is no. And this is why I'm a firm believer in you don't necessarily have to go back to a past life. You don't have to do past life regression. You don't have to do trauma regression. You don't have to relive it. Who wants to do that? Like, that does not sound fun. Nobody wants to do that shit. I didn't want to do that shit. I've done it. But when I allowed my body to feel it and I allowed my body to let go into it, I actually started to access some of the memory. Now, it wasn't complete because, again, my nerve stopped recording, but I was able to remember enough to get an understanding of what happened. But I have not been able to do that with all of them. It's not necessary. The only thing is necessary is for you to love and have compassion and allow yourself to feel that trauma. Angela, she was a prior student of Soulvaltion. She says, interesting you say that. I was listening to another podcast and the host said it wasn't until he was held by a man that he was able to open up to a woman. Yeah, yeah. And you know what? My best friend's heard me say this a million times, but when I'm hurting, all I want to do is be held because I wasn't held. When I was hurting as a child, I was left alone to handle it myself. Where do you think the strong woman wound comes from? You know, a strong person wound, right? Where people who think they don't need anybody, they're super independent. You are left to deal with your emotions by yourself. So when I'm emotional, when I'm hurting, I don't want someone to fix it. I don't want someone to reconcile it. You know what I want? I want them to hold me so that I can feel safe to break. I want someone to hold me while I fucking lose my shit. I want to feel safe and held. Um, my stepsisters just told me that they're reading The Body Remembers. I don't know that book. That sounds like a good book to read. And listen, there's going to be some people who that's their path. That's why there's practitioners out there that do, hypnosis to bring you back into the trauma or to bring you back into the memory or past life regression. Um, if that's something that really calls to you, then there's something in there for you. But to say that you absolutely need it to heal is bullshit. You don't. You don't. It's a choice. It's a choice. I know when I did ayahuasca, there was a lot of people. Ayahuasca is a pretty gnarly experience at some time. For some people, it was for me anyway. But there were people that were healing things that they didn't, and I was one of them, right? They didn't even know was inside of me, but I didn't need to see the memories. I didn't need to see what caused those things. I just had to go through the experience and purify it from my body, purify it from my blood. It reaffirmed more than ever that it really is just about being in the body and allowing for yourself to have this experience. Because as a reminder to you guys, we came here, Earth is a feeling planet. At the end of the day, we didn't, this isn't Earth school at the very highest level, the very highest understanding. This isn't Earth school. We didn't come here to learn lessons. We didn't come here to heal soul contracts. All of those things are true. But at the end of the day, we are here to feel. Yet it's the thing that we avoid the most. How ironic is that? Because when we are in our energetic form, we live in the gray area. It's very peaceful. There's only one feeling of love. It's unconditional, right? It's a very peaceful space. When we come to Earth, the depth of love in which we feel is huge. We have so many layers and different frequencies of love and joy. And then we have the duality. We have all these feelings of hate and anger and depression and shame. And this is why I'm always telling people, like, sometimes we choose to come have an earthly experience where we kind of play on the dark side. We've all had dark lives. Why? We wanted to feel. So we came here to feel. With the ego that is created in the human brain is the only thing that judges if it's good or bad, dark or light, right or wrong. And I know that that is so controversial today to state that, but it can only be right or wrong for you. Everything else is just a depth of feeling. What you judge it is the ego. Jesus is my homeboy, and I work with Jesus all the time. And you know what? Judgment is not what we're here for. It's not what we're here for. I have someone in here who's pulling in the Christ stuff. Thought I heard you mention the book, The Body Remembers. I was thinking synchronicity. Oh, The Body Keeps Score. The book I was talking about is The Body Keeps Score. I forget who it's authored by. I haven't read it. I own it. It's not with me. It's in my storage unit. But it, The Body Keeps Score is a great book for trauma and trauma work, um, PTSD, things like that. If you want to, go at it on your own or just read the book in general, it's a great. I've heard over and over, it's a great book, but I have not read it myself. But that's the book Renee I was talking about. It's The Body Keeps Score. Okay, so I posted the link. I'm going to do it again. If you want to look at more information about the details of Soulvaltion cohort 2, you can click that link and learn more. The details about when we're starting. This is going to be a very short launch. I think it's going to be 2 weeks most. Yeah, because 2 weeks from today, I will release module 1, and everybody will have the first teaching call. And that's why, you're like, oh my God, what time are the calls? The teaching module you can do on your own every Thursday at 12:30 Pacific Standard Time. Check your time zone for what that would be. We will have the community call. If we come to a situation to where there's a bunch of people in a time zone where 12:30 Pacific time doesn't work and we all agree to change it, we will do that. But right now it will stand at 12:30 Pacific time. Angela says Soulvaltion was such a powerful experience for me. Highly recommend. Thank you, Angela. And Angela, I'm actually going to reach out to you after this, but 2 of the girls so far that were in, 2 out of the group of girls that were in Soulvaltion have agreed to do next week. So they're going to come live. And we're going to talk about their experiences, how they continue to use it, what they gained from it. We will answer more questions from the audience. So again, if you have a new question about parts work, about integration work, about any of this, you can post it here. You can post it on my original post, or just show up live. I will be announcing the times probably tomorrow and putting the schedule out for those lives, so that you guys can get more juicy content from me just for being here, even if it's not something that interests you, but can give you more context about the program if you do feel called to it. And for those of you who are on TikTok or Instagram, I will be updating my link profile to have this landing page in just about an hour, less than an hour. So come back in an hour and check, and it will be there. But I thank you guys for joining me today. It might be the body keep. It probably is the body keep store because it really is about the body remembering what the mind forgets. It's 100%. So I bet you guys. Thank you guys for joining me today. It's been good to be back live. I have missed you all. I most likely will be live tomorrow to do a short energy update for April. No promises, but I'm going to try to make that happen. So look forward to that. If not, it will be April's energy. If I don't do it tomorrow, April's energy update will be next week. So I hope you guys have an amazing day. Thanks for being here, and I will see you next time.